I'm Daniel Shin. I'm a physician and real estate investor. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in a second, but this is a Serious Real Estate Happy Hour. And the topic this month is how high income physicians can keep more of their income. So it's a general topic, but it'll talk about a few different pillars, and I'll get into specifics. The caveat here is that how can we do it without working more hours? Okay, that's an important part of it. So, as a disclaimer, this presentation is for educational purposes only. As I said, my background is that I'm a physician. I'm not a legal, tax, or financial advisor as a professional job. So always consult the specific professionals for those areas before making big decisions, okay? So consider this for educational purposes, but I'm glad to have the opportunity to present it to you. So this is me. This is my beautiful family. I'm a physician, urologic surgeon, and real estate investor. For a long time now, I've gone by the Darwinian Doctor online, initially anonymously, but much more recently under my own name. So, more recently, I'm also the founder of Cereus Real Estate, and I'll tell you all about that. I'm an active and passive investor in about 1,000 units of real estate at this point. I was born on the East Coast, first generation Korean immigrant family, no personal finance education in my family or upbringing. And unfortunately, there was a lot of financial stress. Our family, when I was growing up, dealt with job loss, eviction from our home during middle school, which was something that created a lot of financial scars. So I think for a lot of immigrant families, the solution to better socioeconomic status is embodied in the children. And for me, I took that to heart and I sought academic excellence. I was valedictorian in my high school, went to Yale for undergrad, and then afterwards went to UPMC in Pittsburgh for medical school. Decided to focus in urology. I did that in Los Angeles at USC. That was a 6 year, very challenging time in my life. And then I joined Kaiser Permanente as a urologist afterwards. You would think that after that was all done, that I had won the game, right? Instead, I found myself wearing what I call golden handcuffs. And you might be feeling this too, but I had this big doctor paycheck, after a couple of years when my paycheck kind of ramped up. I was married with kids. I had the doctor house. I had the doctor car. We're members of a beach club. The kids were in private school or private daycare. But this was all the things that were coming along with that. I had a 10-hour weekly commute, 1 hour to Orange County and 1 hour back if I was lucky. I was on call a lot, and the overnight call was exhausting. There was endless pressure to see more patients in clinic. And a lot of times, even in organization which I respect like Kaiser, there was a focus on the metrics over what I think many would consider quality patient care. I didn't see my kids a lot. I would leave before they got up in the morning, and by the time I got back home, they were in bed or, maybe I would be able to hug them goodnight. So I was also 300K in debt. We all know this well because the medical training process is incredibly expensive. And we were in California and we were blessed with a high income, but so much of that was going towards federal and state taxes and payroll taxes. So I'll talk about that a lot. So the final sort of thing that worried me was that there are a lot of concerning trends in US healthcare. And it made me worried about, my future career and the future of US healthcare. So around year two of being an attending, I seized on a new goal, and that was financial freedom. And I thought that at the time that it was only financial freedom that could offer true autonomy over my job and my life. So that became my new goal, financial freedom. And after a ton of education, I decided to focus on real estate because it's a very common vehicle towards becoming a millionaire in this country. It offers tax advantaged growth and it's also a dependable source of cash flow. So this might be ringing a bell. My story is probably very similar to your story. You want financial security to break your golden handcuffs. You want more passive income, which can then lead to time freedom. You want a legacy for your kids, and you also want time to pursue your own interests and passions. Just a quick thing about Cereus Real Estate. This is what I started in 2024. We have over 700 potential investors. So far, we've invested over $3 million of capital. And as Cereus Real Estate, we have an equity stake in over 600 units of multifamily real estate, and we're just getting started. So let's get into the meat of the talk here. So, how can high income physicians keep more of their income without working more hours? So, let's start out with a very basic question that I like to ask people. What is your biggest expense? Do you know what it is? Is it your mortgage? Is it your student loan payments? Is it private school tuition for your kids? Or are you obsessed with Labubus and just buying them left and right? No, it's your taxes. So if you think about where your general income goes, the largest majority of it is probably going to taxes. As a high income professional, your combined state, federal, and payroll taxes are probably somewhere between 35 to 50%, which is probably by far the biggest contributor to your expenses. Just for an example, a physician in New York City who makes around 300 to 400K is probably paying 23% effective federal tax rate, 10% effective state taxes, and 7% payroll. So just think about it this way: about 4 or 5 months of the year, you're working just to pay taxes. I know that's a little depressing. So let's figure out what to do about it. So the thing about it, since it's such a contributor to your expenses, a tax efficient investing strategy can be your biggest wealth accelerator because it could free up potentially so much more of your money that can go towards growing your wealth as opposed to paying the government. So this is the dilemma as a physician. We are high income. We're very blessed with that. We work really hard to get there, and we do a very special thing for, humanity, but the high income comes with some problems. You have very limited time. Most physicians work 50 plus hours a week, and that's not counting the hours you're spending at home on your EMR, doing your notes at night. And we've got these golden handcuffs, right? So the other problem is that we have a progressive tax system that penalizes high earners. So the more you make, the more you get taxed up to a certain point. We also, and this is critical, we have a late start to our earnings. So we generally start earning a real paycheck about a decade after our peers. So lawyers, engineers, they can start earning real paychecks in their early 20s. We have to wait until our 30s, sometimes our mid 30s. And that critical decade is a lost decade in terms of our wealth growth. I would say the final thing here is that, we get so much training in medicine, obviously. That's what we're in training for 10, 15 years. But everything else goes by the wayside. So I would say most people in this country don't get much business or financial education, but certainly I would say physicians are especially prone to not having any idea about finances, and we pay the price. So, how do we solve this dilemma? We need to go from trading time for money to making our money work for us. And, whenever I say that, some people inevitably, I have a social media presence. Inevitably, people on social media, I get some criticism. I would say most people are not high income, and most people don't have the luxury of thinking about this concept. They say, obviously, you're not going to make money if you don't work. My argument is that that is the crux of the problem. You have to shift your mindset, and you have to shift it to one where you put your money to work for you, because that's the only way to really leverage the options out there for investment to really grow your wealth. All right, so let's get into it. This is really my tax efficient wealth building framework, as I call it. You may have, joined this from being an investor in Cereus Real Estate, or you might have seen an ad for this, talk on Instagram or Facebook. But one thing that I promised in the ad is that I'm going to talk about what I do, because that's really my experience. And I think of it in three pillars. I want to maximize tax advantaged investing accounts. I want to strategically use business entities, and I also want to use real estate because it's very tax efficient, as I'll talk to you about. So let's first go through it one by one, because I think most people, have some understanding of tax advantaged accounts. So let's talk about it. And I'm going to go into each of these things, but basically, this is what I do. You have a lot of ability to invest into accounts like this, but a 401k is a retirement account, and it is a pre-tax account. So I work as a 1099 as I may have discussed, previously, but I currently split my time. So I do about 25% of my month in medicine as a locum tenens. I get paid as a 1099, and the rest of my time is dedicated to serious real estate and real estate investing in my personal portfolio as well. So my wife is traditionally employed, so she has a 401k. She maxes that out. We also max out a backdoor Roth IRA. So, as high earners, we cannot directly contribute to a Roth IRA, but we can do it through what's called the backdoor. So, we contribute to a traditional IRA and then transfer it to a Roth IRA, as is this is a legal strategy. A lot of people do it. We also contribute towards educational accounts for our kids. So, even though this money is not pre-tax, it is going to grow tax-free and we can use it without penalty for educational things for our kids later on. We also have a little HSA. I briefly was with Kaiser when they had a high deductible health plan. So that's how you qualify for something like that. So, what does this actually cost, and what are the tax savings if you really max out these options? So these are exact numbers for 2025, but if you're investing in a 401k, you can put away 23,500 bucks. If you're over 50 years old, you can do what's called catch up and you can contribute a lot more, but 23 and a half thousand dollars is a lot of money. And since that's pre-tax money, you're not getting taxed on what's going in. You can think of, you're saving if you're at the highest marginal federal tax rate, you're saving about $8,700 by investing into this account tax-free. So Roth IRAs are another retirement account that grows tax free. You're going to be able to pull this out tax free at the end, whereas a 401k, you do get taxed when you pull out that income later on. But, Roth IRA is the sort of the brother to the 401k because you put in post-tax money, but it grows tax free and you can pull it out tax free. So that implies some savings there. The 529s is going to be, sorry, post-tax money as well, but it's going to grow tax-free. And as long as you use it for education for your kids or grandkids or your niece, whoever you dedicate it to, that is tax-free as well. So basically, you can put away if you do what we do, which is $1,000 a month per child into the 529. You max out your Roth IRA for both spouses. You do at least one 401k. 50, $60,000, you could stuff a lot of money away into these tax advantaged accounts, which on an annual basis is saving multiple tens of $1,000s. Okay. So obviously some of this is specific to our situation, but it should give you an idea of what's possible. Okay. So hopefully you're doing a lot of that. There are some other accounts that I'm not going to go into just for the sake of time, but for that 1099 income, if you have some of that, you can open a solo 401k. You can also consider a cash balance plan. One thing about the 401k, a lot of employers have a match. So that means that they're encouraging you to invest into these accounts by saying that if you put away a certain amount, we will actually match that. We'll match the amount of money that you put away into your 401k, and that's just free money. So if you're not doing that, that's on you. So let's move along here. The thing that I like about tax advantaged accounts is that it's really easy to set and forget. A lot about wealth growth is just making it low friction and easy. So, a lot of these things you can set it up so that it automatically contributes from your paycheck, that it automatically reinvests, and there are a lot of options, at least in good retirement plans, to invest into widely diversified index funds. And as I said, sometimes your employer will kind of match some contributions, so it's free money. And then, as long as you're investing it into widely diversified index funds, you can count on about an 8 to 10% annual return. And that is historical. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, but that's not a bad return. So you could just do tax advantaged accounts, put away a lot of money in there, and you will eventually get to financial freedom. When I was calculating all of this and going through my financial freedom rebirth in the early part of my attending career, I mapped out a 15-year plan of just brute force savings into stocks. I eventually figured out that I could get there a lot faster through real estate, but you can definitely do it. So, what don't I like about tax advantaged accounts? They're illiquid because they're retirement accounts or educational accounts. You can't access them. There are huge penalties for accessing them before official retirement age of 59 and a half. A lot of times, there are a lot of rules about how you can access them. In some cases, as a caveat to this, you can roll them into a self-directed IRA, which gives you a lot more freedom. I'll touch on that a little later. Um, but a lot of these things, it is the definition of delayed gratification because for the most part, they're not offering a benefit that you're going to feel right now. So they'll multiply wealth and grow in the background, but are they going to solve the pain that you're experiencing in your for your 40th patient in clinic? They're not necessarily going to fix that, all right? The only thing that can really change that is cash flow that you can use now. So let's talk about some other options that can do that. So I want to touch on this a little bit. It doesn't apply to everyone, but business entities can be really powerful. Let's talk about really quick, why does the US government like businesses? And why do I think they like businesses? It's because they give tax benefits to business owners. It's because businesses are really great for the economy. They increase the gross domestic product and they create jobs. And you need to have people working in jobs so that they can contribute to the economy and, pay for housing and do all the things that we need citizens to do in this country. So basically, whenever you see the government offering tax incentives, I don't like to think of it as a handout. I think that's a really simplistic way of looking at it. It's the way that the government expresses what they would like this citizens to be doing. That's why they incentivize it. And generally there's a good reason for it. Generally they're incentivizing things that will grow the economy or will create public housing or maintain our housing stock. So um, that's why the government likes businesses, though, that these tax incentives allow businesses to reinvest into revenue and business growth. And that makes us more competitive on a global scale. So here's a question, though. Can full-time doctors be business owners? The answer is 100% with some caveats. This is kind of a rundown of what I consider my core businesses, but I started a social media platform. I have Evolution Medical Group is the company that I started that sells my services, my medical services as a locum tenens. Generation Holdings holds my private real estate holdings, and Cereus Real Estate, as I'll talk about, is the real estate fund. It's technically the management group that owns the real estate fund, but these are all businesses. The caveat of all of this, as I'll mention, is that it takes a lot of time. So keep that in mind. So, what do I get by being a business owner? I get access to business deductions. You don't get that as a W-2 employee. But if I spend money to buy a laptop for my home office that I'm using for the businesses, if I'm going on business travel related to checking out a property for Cereus Real Estate, if I'm buying equipment related to it, this microphone that I'm talking into, these are deductible business expenses. If you have a business, you can do something called the Augusta rule, which is 100% legal. You can rent your home to your business for up to 14 days a year. You can also hire your family members to work in your business. So this is a common way for business owners to really start their children out on the right foot because they can hire their children to do age appropriate tasks. They can pay them an appropriate wage, but up to a certain amount that is tax free for the kids. And the parents can invest it on their behalf, and it can really give them a good financial footing. So these are all things that I incorporate into our financial plan for our kids and family. Caveat, AI told me to mention this all requires strict documentation and rule adherence. Okay. So businesses pay you first also. This is something that's important to note, but as a W-2 earner, if you are an employee, you get taxed as you earn it. So automatically you get deductions from your paycheck that goes to pay taxes up front. Many times, depending on your tax situation, the business is only taxed come tax time. So you can manage your expenses and at the end of the tax year, file the deductions so that you're only getting taxed on the actual money that you're that you're earning. That is not a deduction. So that's more time that your money can be working for you and being used to grow your businesses. So if you are employed, what could you do? Like realistically, you can potentially do some moonlighting, even if you're employed full time. I actually know some people that spend a weekend here or there doing some local locum tenens if your contract allows it. You could do expert speaker work, expert witness work. You can nowadays create an AI company in your spare time. And I only mention that because I really do think it's possible these days with AI tools. Topic for another day. Or you can invest in real estate. Obviously, I'm going to talk about that a lot. Let's do a quick time check. All right, I think we're doing well. The caveat that I mentioned early on, and I know this firsthand, business creation and growth takes a tremendous amount of time and effort. So, is it realistic for someone working 50 or 60 hours a week to start a business in their spare time? I did it with the real estate that I started buying from year two of being an attending physician, but you know, I was managing it at midnight, emailing my contractor on the weekends, reviewing contracts and looking at property. And, I thought that by starting the business, I was going to be getting myself freedom to spend more time with my kids. But a lot of times, at least in the early stages, I found that I was spending that time working on the business. So, what do we do about that? We'll talk about it. If you're an independent physician, obviously, you can structure your private practice in a way that is very tax efficient. Talk to your CPA. An S Corp offers really good benefits, but maybe you can own your medical office building. Can you own the surgery center or the radiology suite? Um, I know a lot of physicians who earn a tremendous amount of ancillary money by these other options, and they're business owners when they step into that realm. So here's the thing about businesses, they are scalable and you are not. What does that mean? So you only have so many hours in the day. You know this firsthand because you're spending it. You're seeing the patients. You are, in the evening taking care of your kids probably, and then you're probably finishing your notes from the day prior before you go to bed. So there are only so many hours in the day. And as a physician, generally, unless you're a business owner, you are earning money per hour. There are only so many procedures you can do per hour, and you can calculate an average rate for your time. And sure, you can increase that somewhat by seeing more patients or doing your procedures a little bit faster. But there is a cap. There is a hard cap to the potential income that you can make by giving your time, energy, and life in the practice of medicine. Now, businesses are not the same, though. Businesses are inherently scalable, and the corresponding income and wealth creation is often unlimited. Obviously, you have to work hard at it and put appropriate practices into place, but a business can have unlimited exponential growth, whereas you cannot. So, on that note, let's talk about real estate investing. The IRS favors real estate investment. A lot of people in the media have talked about this recently because not to get political, but our president is a real estate investor. So a common criticism of his taxes, which I still don't know if he's released them, but he doesn't pay much in taxes because so much of his income is sheltered by real estate. So is that a bad thing? I would contend not, because the IRS has good reason to favor real estate investment. Historically, the government used to be very involved in public housing, but if you look at the history, public housing projects did not end up going very well. That name, projects, is now synonymous with poorly kept, low income housing that is often associated with crime. So largely, the government tries to stay out of the housing market. They incentivize it and they facilitate it through lending organizations like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. But this is largely outsourced to the private market, to investors like you and me. So they incentivize it so that the government doesn't have to create and maintain all the housing in this country. It's done by the private industry. So here's why real estate is inherently tax advantaged and why I love it so much. It's mainly depreciation. So what is depreciation? Depreciation, depreciation is basically the concept that stuff wears out. And this is true for clothing, but it's also true for real estate. If you think about a house, the rain and the sun and the wind, it's weathering the exterior, it's weathering the roof. On the inside, you're walking on the floors and wearing out the flooring surface. When you use your kitchen, you're wearing out the cabinets. So everything wears out. And the government acknowledges that and gives you an allowance. So for it's a little different between commercial and residential real estate, but basically about 2.5 to 3.5% of the building's value can annually be deducted legally. The government assumes that you're doing it. Actually, if you don't claim it, they're just assuming that you're going to do it anyway. So it'll mess up your books. So make sure you're claiming it. So, for example, if you have a $250,000 building and the land is worth $50,000, you don't depreciate that because land doesn't wear out, but you've got a value of about $200,000 for the building. That's about $8,750 a year that you can take as a legal deduction on the income from that. So, what does that do? That oftentimes covers the profit or the income to make that tax free. So that is basically, in a nutshell, depreciation. The thing that makes depreciation even more powerful is something called accelerated depreciation. So this is, again, a legal technique where you accelerate up to 15 years of depreciation into the first year. What does that mean? Everything in your house can be put on a separate depreciation schedule. So, if you think about it, probably a carpet is going to wear out a lot faster than granite countertops. So the carpet might have a usable lifespan of 10 years or 5 years, whereas the granite is going to be put on a 20-year time span or something like that. So using a technique called accelerated depreciation, you can take all of the 5, 10, and 15-year timeline, stuff in your house and accelerate all that depreciation into year one. That is combined with something called bonus depreciation, and it can create an enormous paper loss in year one. What is a paper loss? It's not money that's coming out of your pocket, but you're allowed to claim it as a loss on your taxes. So, in a lot of ways, that can be used to negate income from real estate, or in some cases, even be deducted against your other income. Long story short, this means that real estate investors, yes, like our president, often pay little to no tax on their cash flow and profits. And if you are what's called a real estate professional, you can even take the bonus depreciation and use it to decrease your taxable income from your W 2 income. So there are very specific rules to that. It can be very difficult, but it can be done, especially if you have a non-working spouse. Otherwise, there is often a barrier between those two things. Your active income and real estate income are often kept in separate buckets. However, even with passive investments that are often kept into a passive investment bucket by the IRS, you can still remain very tax efficient by rolling your profits into other deals in the same tax year. This is often called the lazy 1031 exchange, which I'm not going to go into, but just to say that there are a lot of strategies here when it comes to real estate. A little bit more about tax efficiency in real estate, but generally, most people are using their post tax dollars. That means you earned money in your W 2 income, and that's post tax money. And then you take that and you invest it into real estate. And then you use all of that depreciation to stay tax efficient. However, you can also invest retirement fund income. So, this is a caveat to that illiquidity and problem with retirement funds where you can't really touch it. In certain situations, you can actually roll over an old 401k or what have you into something called a self-directed IRA and invest it into real estate. This is very tax efficient since it's pre-tax dollars, and oftentimes it's just sitting there, not doing much for you. So, this is a common way of investing in real estate. In our last capital campaign for a property in Dallas, we had several investors who used this route. So, let's talk a little bit about passive real estate investment, because that is really the product that is offered through Cereus Real Estate. So, one of the characteristics is hands-off cash flow. So the whole idea of a passive real estate investment is that you are using you're leveraging the expertise of others. So you take your investment and invest as a limited partner in a business venture, which is generally something like a multifamily apartment complex. And as a limited partner, you're entitled to profits, you're entitled to tax advantages, but you don't have to deal with the day to day. So if one of the tenants in the real estate apartment complex accidentally sets fire to their kitchen and causes a lot of damage, you don't have to deal with that. The professional team in place will be able to take care of that while you can do what you do best, earning a great income while taking care of the sick and needy in the US. So, just to say that this is a scalable investment strategy because it is passive and you do not have to deal with the day to day. So, that's the beauty of it. What are the risks, though? Let's make sure to go into that. There's a risk of loss of capital. So, a lot of people who invested in this exact same asset class in 2022, they're not very happy right now because unfortunately, we were in a bubble at that time. So, interest rates during 2022, you might recall, quadrupled. And all of a sudden, the basic fundamentals of those deals didn't make sense. And we now know that a lot of the people who invested in those deals, they paid too much. So that is a possibility. So some of those investors lost their capital. A lot of these investments have a 3 to 5 year or 7 year even time horizon. So there is some illiquidity involved in investments like this as well. There's some operator risk. So if the operator is not a good operator, they may take the capital and run away to Tahiti. And uh, that is a risk of something like this as well. Obviously, so I mentioned the market can go down. So if the market's in a bubble and then it pops or bursts, then we could be in trouble. There's also less control. Since you're a limited partner, you don't have as much control over the day to day. You have less control over the decision making process. But you can mitigate this risk. So one of the best things that you can do as if you're considering an investment into passive real estate is to do due diligence. And, I'm blessed with time at this point in my investing career. So as I said, I spend about a quarter of my time in medicine still, which I love. But the rest of the time I devote to serious real estate and real estate investing. So I do as much of the due diligence as I can in the front end. So I do, for example, if I'm thinking about raising capital for a deal, I'm going to do extensive due diligence on the sponsors. And yes, I mean like background checks and things like that. I'm going to use the expertise that I have to analyze the financial projections. Does it make sense? Does the rent growth make sense? Do the cap rates make sense? I devoted a lot of time and money educating myself in this field. And I'll also fly out often and go kick the asset. So I'll go in and secret shop the apartment complex. I did this for the Dallas deal. It was really fun. And I'll just do as much of that on the outset to try to mitigate that risk. Having a good partner in this to advocate for you can be really important too. And that is a function that I can serve with the real estate fund of Cereus Real Estate. So, what does this all look like? This is an example of my literal tax return from an investment last year in another project called the Hampton Meadows. I invested 50K into the deal. I always invest into the deals that I offer. And yet the K1 showed a net income loss, $14,000, $400. So did I actually lose $14,000? No, that is a result of depreciation, and that gets passed on to you as a passive investor because you're like a shareholder in the business. In fact, we received cash flow in the first year, yet the K1 still shows a negative. That is the beauty of depreciation and the way that real estate investing can be so tax efficient. And this is all despite the fact that the deal is projected to actually earn 20% annual returns. So you're getting cash flow, you're working towards a cash out that will is projected to get you a hefty return. Yet your K1 from the first year and probably the subsequent years shows a tax loss. So the beauty of depreciation in action. So we're getting towards the end here. I'm hopeful we'll have some opportunity for some questions at the end. Thanks for everyone sticking on through the call. I really enjoy doing these talks. So just another thing about Cereus Real Estate in case you came on late. So these are exact pictures from the couple of deals that we've invested in as a group. On the top here is a 360 unit apartment complex in Des Moines called the Hampton Meadows. The bottom is a deal that we just closed along with the operator in Dallas, right outside of Dallas in the Dallas Fort Worth area. A beautiful B plus type property in a B plus neighborhood, almost a 250 unit complex. And in both deals, we as in Cereus Real Estate and our investors, we purchased about 10% of the equity in the deals. So we've invested so far about 3.2 million. I expect that to grow quite quickly. And as a collective group, we have an equity stake in over 600 units of multifamily real estate. The thing that I want to note, let me see if I get into it. So the thing that I want to note about this is that I talked about the bubble bursting in 2022. So I would say that the investors in that time period and the operators did everything they could do to stabilize the bubble and try to ride it out. But interest rates have stayed stubbornly high. A lot of these lenders have run out of patience for these deals to make sense. So the building on top and the building on bottom were both purchased about 20 to 30% below what they would have sold for in 2022 or what they were purchased for in 2022. In fact, the bottom one was 31% below the sales price in 2022. So again, you can't get rid of risk, right? A lot of things can go wrong in the economy, but when you're buying something and getting into a deal at a 30% discount, you've taken a lot of financial risk off the table. So hopefully that'll sink in and tell you about the opportunity that we're in this cycle of multifamily investing. So I try to make this a triple win as much as possible. So again, I investigate the deals as much as possible. I can't get rid of all the risk, but I try to do the best that I can. And I help translate the risks and benefits of the deal to you, just like I do for my patients when I'm talking to them about a nephrectomy or a prostatectomy or something like that. I try to do the same for my investors in Cereus Real Estate. And then, since we're a real estate fund, I can aggregate the capital and bring it over to a deal in one check to negotiate better deal terms and add efficiency to the operator. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I've been really excited about this. This isn't even something that I've talked about publicly yet, but 10% of all the Cereus Real Estate profits will be directed to a Memphis nonprofit or into economic growth programs here in Memphis where I live. So about 3 years ago, I moved from LA to Memphis, Tennessee. It's a place that I think has incredible potential, also incredible need. Unfortunately, there's a lot of poverty here. So I'm really excited about this, and I've already started that bank account, and I'm excited to put this to use very soon. Um, so Anik Sharma asked a question, but I'm gonna get the. Let me get the. I think I have just a couple more slides, and then I'll get to that. Just bear with me for a few more minutes here. So just to finish up, I said that I'd be open about what I do. I still invest in stocks. I think that it's easy. I think that it's a way to diversify, and I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. And I encourage you to do the same. So I still put about 50% of my assets in equities via stocks and index funds, retirement funds, etc. And I put 50% of my assets in real estate. And I divide that into active real estate, which I still own, and passive real estate. So my advice to you, always be thinking about ways to optimize your wealth trajectory. Realize that optimizing your tax efficiency is really worth the effort, even if you make small tweaks now. You max out your 401k, whereas last year you didn't. These small tweaks over time through compounding and time can really, really grow to make a huge difference on how much wealth you have in 10 years or in 20 years. Don't wait until next year. Start now. We're in an advantaged time in the real estate cycle, especially in multifamily real estate. If you're on this talk, you've passed pre-contemplation. You're in the contemplation stage. So really get into this. Sink your teeth into what can make you accelerate your wealth. And then I always talk to people about this, but if you're feeling kind of stuck, I want to just have you step back on your commute or, just take a walk and think about your ideal life in 5, 10, and 15 years. It might be very different from the life that you're living right now in terms of what you're doing with your time and your weekends and your free time, and your income and your passive income. So if it is different, work backwards from there and map out a strategy to get there. And you will get there faster by not paying 40 or 50% of your income in taxes. All right, so thank you. This is the last slide, and then I'm going to get into the questions here. But um, some people are going to be watching this on YouTube and are not members of Cereus Real Estate. So if you're not, please join us here. This is a talk that was directed at physicians, but it applies to everyone. We also have lawyers and engineers and dentists and optometrists in our group as well. So please, the more the merrier. Just go to Cereus Real Estate, put in your info, and you'll be uh, on the inside. Okay. A lot of deals can only be advertised to people who are already a part of the list, unfortunately. So let's get to the questions here. So Unique is asking, when is your next deal coming, and do you invest in all your deals? Yes, I invest in all my deals. The In general, except for special circumstances, it's going to be a $50,000 minimum. And for an investment into Cereus Real Estate, you also have to be an accredited investor. So I didn't get into that, but basically it means that you have to meet a certain income level, which is 200K annual income as a individual, or 300K with your spouse, or you have to have a certain net worth, not including your primary home. But generally, the minimum investments are going to be $50,000. Anyone on the call right now, you're already part of the email list, so you'll hear about it. Just make sure my emails are not going to spam. And basically, it'll tell you the details about the deal. It's going to be a pretty exhaustive email, but it'll also either link to or invite you to a call that will go into detail over about an hour about the asset. It'll tell you where it is, what it is, how many units we're talking about, what the financial plan is, what are the likely returns. This is a QR code, by the way. So if you're still on this call and you're watching this later on, or you're catching this on YouTube under the YouTube channel, just scan that QR code. That'll take you to SeriusRealEstate.com, and then just click join now, and then you'll be able to enter in your information and join the investor club. So, so Karen asked a really great question. What is the difference between me, Cereus Real Estate, and other real estate syndications? I would say that there may be no difference at all, or there might be a lot of difference. What do I mean by that? So I think that uh, one of the strengths that I have is the ability to take concepts and break it down. So I think some people still invest into things that they have very little understanding about. As an investor, I try not to do that. So I try to understand any investment that I make to a very minute level. And I think I excel at communicating those concepts to an investor to make sure that you know what you're getting into. So I think a lot of groups are perfectly happy to take capital and not put any effort into actually explaining the risks about investments. Um, but that's not me. So I treat everything with a high level of professionalism, just like I explain the risks and benefits of any surgical procedure I do. So I try to bring that level of professionalism into the real estate world as well. Also, the difference is that I consider myself a co-investor with everything. So yes, I do. There are some fees associated with an investment into a real estate fund, just like there are fees for investing into anything. But you often don't see those fees when you're investing into an index fund or an ETF or something like that. On the other hand, I'm very upfront about them. So my goal is to make sure that by going through Cereus Real Estate, you are benefiting more than if you go through straight to the operator and invest with them, because again, I'm using our larger check size to negotiate better returns. And yes, I invest into every deal. that we do, and that is hard-earned capital that I'm earning by, my wife's job, my locum tenens job, and the real estate investment. So I would say that's a differentiator. That being said, there are good operators out there as well. I by no means do I try to diminish them, but I think I do a great job. All right, last couple of minutes for probably one last question. Otherwise, we'll call it a night. But again, really thank you. It's been very consistent viewership during the entire presentation. I appreciate that. I know people have kids, it's probably dinner time, or you're on your commute home, or you're, getting ready to put your kids to bed. So really appreciate your attention during this. And again, I try to do this on a monthly basis. When we're in the midst of a capital raise, oftentimes there are a lot of events going on, a lot of one-on-one talks. So it might lapse during those times. But on generally on a monthly basis, I try to do these happy hour talks to give back as much education as I can to make sure that you're well equipped, both for the real estate investment and just that you know what's going on in the economy. I've given talks about a lot of the basic concepts of apartment investing, things like cap rates, talking about the interest rates and why they matter so much. So I think that's about it, guys. So I really appreciate your attention. Thank you for tuning in and hope to talk to you one on one very soon. Make sure to schedule your call. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.